My name is Claire Ashford. I'm 41. 3 weeks after I buried my husband, his mother called a realtor and listed my house for sale. She scheduled showings. She printed flyers. She told my neighbors, on my street, in front of my mailbox, that the property belongs to the family now, and that she'd be handling the transition. What none of them knew, what Donna never bothered to check, was that the deed to 4412 Wrenfield Lane had never carried my married name. Not once. Not on any page. The house was purchased in 2011 under the name Claire Elise Morrow, paid in full with a $327,000 inheritance from my grandmother, Ruth Morrow, whose notarized gift letter was still sitting in a fireproof lockbox in my bedroom closet. Donna didn't just try to sell a house that wasn't hers. She tried to sell a house that had never belonged to her son. Before I tell you what happened at the first open house, tell me, what time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? I always wonder how far a story like this travels. Let me go back. I grew up in Ridgewood, New Jersey, in a small colonial on Hillcrest Avenue that my grandparents bought in 1968. My mother, Patricia, was the youngest of 3 sisters, and the only one who stayed local. She raised me alone. My father left when I was 4, and we never heard from him again. Not a card, not a dollar, just silence shaped like a man. My grandmother Ruth was the fixed point. She was a retired court stenographer, and she kept records of everything: birthday cards, receipts, school pictures, immunization dates. She had a filing cabinet in the hallway with color-coded folders for each grandchild. Mine were green. She used to say, "Claire Bear, the world will try to tell you what you own. You keep the paper that says otherwise." I didn't understand that until much later. Ruth passed in January of 2011. I was 25. She left me $327,000, the proceeds from the sale of the Hillcrest house, which she'd paid off in 1991. The will was clean. No contest. No ambiguity. She also left a notarized gift letter, dated 6 months before her death, addressed to me specifically. The letter said, "This money is for Claire Elise Morrow, to purchase a home of her own. It is not marital property. It is not joint. It is hers." My mother told me Ruth had written that letter after watching a segment on a morning show about women losing assets in divorce. She wanted no confusion, no gray area, no room for anyone to claim what she intended for me alone. I was not married at the time. I wasn't even dating anyone seriously, but I listened to my grandmother. I found a 3-bedroom Cape Cod in Maplewood, 4412 Wrenfield Lane, listed at $319,000. I offered $310,000 cash. The seller accepted. I closed in 31 days. The deed was recorded in the name Claire Elise Morrow. My attorney at the time, Janet Pryor, advised me to keep it that way regardless of future circumstances. That was the smartest legal advice I've ever received. I met Andrew Garris 14 months later, at a fundraiser for a children's literacy nonprofit. He was kind, warm, a little scattered. He worked in municipal planning for Essex County and drove a 10-year-old Subaru with a cracked windshield he kept meaning to fix. He was not ambitious in the way that frightens people. He was steady. We married in October of 2013. Small ceremony, 40 guests. I kept my maiden name professionally and hyphenated socially. Claire Morrow Garris in Christmas cards, Claire Morrow on the mortgage note, the insurance policy, the tax filings, the deed. Andrew never asked me to change it. He never once referred to the house as his. He called it your place for the first 2 years, then home after that. He mowed the lawn, he painted the shutters, he fixed the porch railing after a nor'easter cracked it. But he understood, quietly, completely, that the house was mine. His mother did not. Donna Garris was a retired dental office manager from Parsippany, who had opinions the way other people have furniture, everywhere, large, and impossible to rearrange. She was not evil. I want to be clear about that. She was the kind of woman who believed that because she had raised a good son, she was owed permanent emotional residency in his life, and, by extension, in mine. She called the house the Garris house, starting from the first Thanksgiving she visited. She told her church group we'd bought it as a couple. She referred to my kitchen renovations, which I paid for, designed, and project managed, as Andrew's remodel. When I corrected her once, gently, She smiled and said, "Well, it's all family money in the end, isn't it?" It wasn't. Andrew and I had a clean financial separation, joint checking for household bills. Everything else, savings, investments, the house, stayed individual. He had a modest 401k and a small pension projection. I had the house and a brokerage account I'd built from freelance marketing income. We filed taxes, married filing jointly, but kept asset ownership documented down to the last dollar. This mattered because in 2017, Andrew was diagnosed with early onset colorectal cancer. Stage 3. He was 36. The next 4 years were a blur of oncology waiting rooms, insurance appeals, and small rituals of normalcy. Sunday pancakes, Tuesday night Jeopardy, walks to the end of the block when he had the energy. I took a leave from my marketing job. I cashed out $42,000 from my brokerage to cover out-of-network specialist fees his insurance wouldn't touch. I never told Donna about any of that. What I told Donna was, "He's comfortable, we're managing." She visited every third weekend. She brought casseroles and unsolicited advice about holistic supplements she'd found on Facebook. She rearranged my linen closet twice. She once told a neighbor, while I was standing 6 feet away watering the garden, that she was practically living here to keep things running. I watered the roses. I said nothing. Andrew passed on March 9, 2023, quietly, in our bedroom, with the window cracked because he liked hearing the birds in the morning. He was 42. I was destroyed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just emptied. The funeral was 4 days later. Donna handled the arrangements, which I allowed because I didn't have the energy to fight, and because Andrew would have wanted her involved. She chose the readings, the flowers, the reception venue. She put together a slideshow, 41 slides, 4 pictures of me, 4. She included 11 photos of herself with Andrew. She included his high school prom photo with another girl. She did not include our wedding photo until I asked. And even then, she placed it at slide 37, after a shot of Andrew at age 9 holding a goldfish. I noticed. I said nothing. After the funeral, Donna began coming to the house more frequently, twice a week, then 3 times. She let herself in with a spare key Andrew had given her years ago for emergencies. She started organizing, moving furniture, boxing up Andrew's clothes without asking, rearranging the kitchen drawers to match her own system. She took down a framed photo of Andrew and me at Cape May and replaced it with a portrait of Andrew at his college graduation. Just Andrew. Alone. Erasure doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives with casserole dishes and good intentions. 6 weeks after the funeral, Donna asked me, casually, over coffee she'd made in my kitchen with my machine, whether I'd thought about what to do with the house. I said, "I'm living in it, Donna." She smiled. That patient, pitying smile she used whenever she thought I was being unreasonable. "I just mean, sweetheart, it's a lot of house for one person, and Andrew would have wanted the family to benefit from the equity. It's a Garris property. We should think about what's fair. A Garris property. The house I bought 3 years before I met her son, with money from my dead grandmother, in my maiden name." I said, "I'll think about it," because that was the sentence that would end the conversation fastest. I should have said more. I know that now. But grief makes you conserve energy in strange ways. You give up small battles because you think they're small. You don't realize someone is surveying the whole territory. 3 weeks later, Donna told the couple next door, the Winstons, Tom and Genevieve, who had brought me soup and silence every week since Andrew died, that she'd be overseeing the sale of the property, and that they should expect some foot traffic for showings. She told them I was in agreement, and that it was what Andrew wanted. Andrew left no will. He had no opinion on the house because the house was not his to have an opinion about. But Donna said it with such certainty that Tom Winston called me that evening to say congratulations on the decision to sell, and to ask if I needed help finding a new place. That was when the ground shifted. On April 28, 2023, I received a phone call from a man named Greg Halstead from Halstead & Lowe Realty. He was calling to confirm a few details on the listing for 4412 Wrenfield Lane. He had the square footage. He had the lot dimensions. He had a suggested listing price of $485,000. He had Donna Garris listed as the authorized family representative. I asked him, very calmly, Who had signed the listing agreement? He said, Mrs. Garris. She indicated she has power of attorney over the estate. There was no estate. Andrew had no ownership interest in the property. There was no power of attorney. There was no authorization. There was nothing. Nothing at all, connecting Donna Garris to the title of 4412 Wrenfield Lane. She had fabricated a legal standing she did not possess and used it to list someone else's home for sale. I asked Greg Halstead one more question. Has she scheduled showings? He said, yes. The first open house is this Saturday, 2 to 4. It was Wednesday. I hung up. I sat on the porch for 11 minutes. I know it was 11 because I watched the time on my phone. I wasn't angry yet. I was something underneath anger. Something geological. The kind of pressure that doesn't shake the surface until the fault line gives. Then I called Janet Pryor, the same attorney who'd handled my closing in 2011. She picked up on the second ring. I told her everything. The listing, the fabricated POA, the showings, the neighbors, all of it. Janet was quiet for about 5 seconds. Then she said, Claire, the most dangerous kind of theft is the kind that comes with a real estate sign and a smile. We're going to handle this the way your grandmother would have wanted, with paper. She told me to pull 3 documents, the original deed, recorded in Essex County in my maiden name, the purchase agreement from 2011, showing the full cash payment from my personal account, and Ruth's notarized gift letter, specifying that the funds were my sole and separate property. All 3 documents were in the fireproof lockbox in my closet, where they had been for 12 years. Janet said, don't cancel the open house. I said, excuse me? She said, let her have her Saturday. You bring the paper. I'll bring a cease and desist and a referral to the county prosecutor's office. We let the room do the talking. That was the plan. No shouting, no confrontation, no sabotage. Just documents, just timing, just truth. Saturday, May 3rd, 2023. 2:07 p.m. I pulled into my own driveway and saw a lockbox on my front door. A lockbox. On my door. There was a blue and white for sale sign in the yard. My yard. The one I'd landscaped with Andrew over 3 summers. The one with the Japanese maple Ruth had given me as a housewarming gift, that was now 14 feet tall. There were 2 couples on the porch. Inside, through the front window, I could see more people walking through my living room. Donna was standing in the foyer in a navy blazer, holding a stack of printed sheets, property specs, I later learned, gesturing toward the staircase like she was conducting a symphony. Greg Halstead was beside her with a clipboard. I walked up the front steps carrying a manila folder. Janet Pryor was 30 seconds behind me, parallel parking her silver Audi. Donna saw me and her face did something complicated. Surprise, then a quick reset into warmth. Claire! I didn't think you'd want to be here for this part. It's okay, sweetheart. I've got it handled. I've got it handled, I said. Donna, can I speak with Mr. Halstead for a moment? Greg Halstead stepped forward. He was mid-40s, pleasant face, the kind of man who probably coached Little League. He extended his hand. Mrs. Garris, good to finally meet you in person. Your mother-in-law has been wonderful to work with. My name isn't Garris, I said. Not on this property. My name is Claire Elise Morrow, and this house is mine. The foyer got very quiet. Not silent, quiet. The kind of quiet that has weight. I opened the manila folder. I placed the deed on the hallway table. The original Essex County recording, stamped and filed, showing Claire Elise Morrow as sole owner. I placed the purchase agreement beside it. $310,000, paid from my personal bank account, dated August 14th, and I placed Ruth's notarized gift letter next to that. Her handwriting on the cover note, the notary seal raised and embossed, dated July 2nd, 2010. 3 documents, 12 years of paper. Greg Halstead looked at the deed. He looked at Donna. He looked back at the deed. He picked it up, read it twice, and then set it down very carefully, the way you set down something that has suddenly become evidence. Mrs. Garris, he said to Donna, this deed is not in your son's name. It's not in any Garris name. This property appears to be solely owned by Miss Morrow. Donna's face didn't collapse. It calcified. That can't be right. Andrew lived here. We all assumed. You assumed, I said. You never asked. One of the couples on the porch, a woman in a green jacket, maybe mid-30s, turned to her husband and said, loud enough for the room to hear, "Wait, whose house is this?" Nobody answered. Because nobody in that room had an answer that made Donna look anything other than what she was, a woman who had tried to sell someone else's home. At 2:23 p.m., Janet Pryor walked through the front door. She was carrying a leather portfolio. She introduced herself to Greg Halstead by name and bar number. She handed him a cease and desist letter requiring the immediate cancellation of the listing, removal of all signage and lockbox hardware, and written confirmation that no further marketing activity would occur related to 4412 Wrenfield Lane. She also handed him a second letter, this one addressed to the brokerage's compliance officer, noting that the listing had been initiated without the knowledge, consent, or signature of the property owner, and that the individual claiming authorization had no legal standing, no power of attorney, and no ownership interest of any kind. Greg Halstead read both letters. He closed his clipboard. He turned to Donna and said, "Ma'am, I'm going to need to end this showing immediately. I'd recommend you speak with an attorney." He walked to the yard and pulled the for sale sign out of the ground himself. The lockbox was off my door by 2:31. The couples left without a word. One of them, the woman in the green jacket, paused on the walkway, looked back at Donna still standing frozen in the foyer, and shook her head, just once, just slightly. Donna turned to me. Her lips were thin. Her hands were shaking. She said, "You didn't have to humiliate me." I said, "You listed my house for sale, Donna. Without my knowledge. Without my consent. You told my neighbors. You told a realtor you had power of attorney. You scheduled strangers to walk through my home, the home I bought with my grandmother's money, in my grandmother's name, 3 weeks after I buried your son, who was my husband, who never once claimed this house was his." She said nothing. I said, "You didn't try to help me. You tried to replace me." Silence. Janet said, "Claire, we should go." We didn't go. I stayed. It was my house. Donna left. The fallout was not dramatic. It was procedural, which is worse, in some ways, because procedural consequences don't have a soundtrack. They just accumulate. Greg Halstead reported the incident to his brokerage's compliance department. Halstead and Lowe Realty opened an internal investigation. Donna was contacted by their legal team and informed that initiating a listing under false pretenses, specifically fabricating a power of attorney, could constitute fraud. She was asked to provide documentation of her claimed authority. She had none. Janet filed a formal complaint with the Essex County Prosecutor's Office, not to press charges, but to create a record. She said, "We're not trying to put a grieving grandmother in jail. We're building a wall of paper so she never tries this again." The neighbors found out in the way neighbors always find out, slowly, unevenly, through kitchen window conversations and group text chains. Genevieve Winston called me that Sunday and said, "Claire, I owe you an apology. She told us you agreed to this. I should have called you directly." I told her there was nothing to apologize for. Donna was convincing. That was, in many ways, the whole problem. Donna's church circle, the one she'd told for years that the house was a Garris family property, began hearing a different version. One of the elders called Janet's office to verify the situation. Janet confirmed, professionally, that Miss Morrow was and had always been the sole owner. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. Within 2 weeks, Donna's reputation in Parsippany had shifted. Not destroyed. Shifted. People still spoke to her. They still sat with her at Sunday service. But there was a new distance in the way they looked at her, and she felt it. I know she felt it because her sister, Andrew's Aunt Carol, called me and said, "She's not sleeping. She's barely eating. She knows what she did." Carol was kind. Carol had always been kind. And Carol did not deserve to be in the middle of this. But she was, because that's what happens when someone detonates a lie in a small community. The shrapnel doesn't check IDs. Donna's first attempt at contact came 11 days after the open house. A text message. 3 sentences. "I was trying to do what I thought Andrew would have wanted. I didn't mean to overstep. I hope we can move past this." I read it. I did not respond. Move past this. As if listing someone's house without their knowledge is a scheduling conflict. as if fabricating legal authority is a miscommunication. Her second attempt came 3 weeks later, through Carol. A voicemail. Donna's voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. She said, "I was wrong. I was wrong about the house. I was wrong about what I thought I was owed. I think I was so afraid of losing everything connected to Andrew that I convinced myself the house was part of him. And it wasn't. It was part of you. I see that now." I played that voicemail 3 times. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt clean. I felt tired. Not relief. Recognition. 8 months later, November 2023. I'm still at 4412 Wrenfield Lane. I refinished the hardwood floors in the upstairs hallway, a project Andrew and I had talked about for years but never started. I chose a honey oak stain that catches the afternoon light. The house smells like sawdust and linseed oil, and something that might be the beginning of whatever comes next. I used $18,000 from my savings to establish a small scholarship through the Essex County Community Foundation, the Ruth Morrow Documentation Fund. It awards $2,500 annually to a first-generation female college student pursuing paralegal or legal studies. The application requires 1 essay, answering 1 question. What document changed your life? My grandmother would have loved that question. Donna and I are not reconciled. We are not estranged. We exist in a careful, deliberate middle. The kind of space where someone can send a birthday card, and the other person can receive it without pretending it means everything is fine. She came to the house once, in September, to pick up a box of Andrew's books she'd asked about. She stood in the doorway. She didn't come inside. She looked at the Japanese maple in the front yard, the one Ruth gave me, and said, "That tree got big." I said, "It did." She said, "I'm sorry, Claire. Not the way I said it before. I'm sorry I treated your home like it was mine to manage. I'm sorry I treated your marriage like I had equal ownership of it. I confused loving my son with controlling what he left behind." I nodded. I didn't say it was okay, because it wasn't. I said, "Thank you." She left. The fireproof lockbox is still in my closet. The deed is still inside. Claire Elise Morrow, sole owner, recorded August 2011. Next to it, in the same folder, is the gift letter from my grandmother, her handwriting steady and precise, the notary seal still raised enough to feel with your fingertip. I touch it sometimes, not to check that it's there. I know it's there. I touch it because it's the last thing she held that was meant only for me. 8. Direct-to-camera moral plus CTA. Here's what I learned, and I'll say it plainly. People will treat your generosity as their inheritance. They will look at what you built and see what they're owed. They'll tell themselves a story where your sacrifice is their safety net, your patience is their permission, and your silence is their signature on the dotted line. And the only thing that stops them, the only thing, is paper. Deeds, letters, timestamps, notary seals, records that exist whether or not anyone believes you, whether or not anyone asks, whether or not someone shows up at your door with a clipboard and a for sale sign in your front yard. Keep the paper. Keep it in your name. Keep it in a lockbox. And when someone tells you it's all family money in the end, understand that what they're really telling you is that they've already started spending yours. Would you have done the same? Or would you have stopped her before the open house? I think about that sometimes. Whether the porch was necessary, whether the documents on the hallway table were theater or justice. I still don't know, but I know the deed is in my name, and I know the tree Ruth gave me is still growing. If this story meant something to you, comment the word deed below and tell me, what's the one document you'd fight for? Disclaimer: this story is fictional, created for dramatic entertainment, education, and reflection. Sometimes the strongest boundary is the one written in ink before anyone knew to test it.